So I'm Sam, and this is my coworker Jessi. We both work in the housing department, and we work for Living Learning specifically. We both do very similar roles. We just work with different faculties, and our role is to supervise the peer mentors that come into the Living Learning communities. We call them peer leaders. So not everyone's going to be familiar, so I'm going to tell you a little bit quickly about what Living Learning does, so you're on the same page as me. What we do is, right now it's happening. Oh. Where am I going to put that? Okay. 1 second. I'm not used to all this technology. I normally don't need a mic no matter how big the room is. So where was I? So what Living Learning does, what's happening right now, students are applying to residence. And for certain programs, the students can choose to live in Living Learning. And what that means is when they come into residence, we're going to cluster them in a certain area. So a floor of 50 students might have 12 to 18 School of Accounting and Finance students on it. And with that community, we're also going to pair them with a peer mentor, who we call a peer leader, and they come in and do academic support with the students. And one of the biggest, the most important components of what they do is student success plans. So these are one-on-one goal setting meetings that the students do with each student in their community. So they sit down and do a half an hour goal setting meeting twice in the fall term with each of their Living Learning students that they have in residence. So that's a little bit about what we do. So we have two main ways that we are using the ePortfolios. So that is to do the student success plans, as well as we have our peer mentors when they come in, create Here's Looking at You pages. We were doing this all along. We just moved to ePortfolios because it goes along with that role modeling. We were using PDFs, sending them out through emails. They were just quick little get to know you pages before the students got here, but it made sense. We have them now create a cute little ePortfolio and send that link out to their students before they get here in September to introduce who they are. So those are our main two ways that we're using it. Why did we choose ePortfolios? There's a lot of really cool internet platforms. We also use SharePoint within Living Learning quite a bit. One of the main reasons is that it is being pushed forward within many of the faculties. Many of our faculty members are using it in their courses. So it's a great way, even if students aren't using it in their first year, to get them familiar with it, get them clicking around. If people are going to start to be sharing things, they're already going to know how to use that resource. So we really wanted to be role modeling what's going on campus. So I told you a little bit about what the student success plans are. They're different for each faculty. They're a set of questions that the students are going to sit down and really help them think about what they're here to do at Waterloo. To ask specific questions about what their career path's going to look like, what goals are in terms of grades they're hoping to make, and that's a very important part. It's also a really important part, just that first meeting with their peer leader. They get to sit down and talk about, learn about what they like to do, what they did over the summer, what else they're hoping to do at Waterloo. So that's really important. It's also a really great personal reflection tool, and Jessi will talk a little bit more about how we're using that reflection and having peer staff go back in and leave comments and follow up with the goal setting plan. And it's also just setting students up for success, having someone go in and check in on their goals and saying, hey, have you thought about this recently? Are you thinking about this plan? So we're not just filing it in the ePortfolio and then forgetting about it later on in the term. So originally we did this all by paper. We had them printed out. I supervised 5 different programs, so I had to sort them all out, hand them out. That was a little bit tedious sometimes, so it definitely reduced paper and just some work on our end being able to do it. It also allowed us to be able to share the student success plans. So before this, I didn't ever see the final product that was happening. It would have been way too much for students to be writing them out, photocopying them, giving them to me. Now they can put those ePortfolios up. We've created individual sharing groups that allow me to see it, allow the peer leader to see it, and allow that student to see it individually. So I'll see them all come through my news feed as they start to get filled out. All of these ePortfolios that are being, these student success plans that are being submitted to the ePortfolios. So that's been really, really great. Like I said, it just integrates everything into one place. Students are already going to learn. My path is being pushed with arts and business and science, and I believe the other faculties might be moving along shortly as well. So it's been a really great way for us to integrate everything into one spot, so the students aren't going to different platforms to do this and to do that. So it's been very successful that way.
All right, so when we moved to ePortfolios from the paper process, we had a few challenges. One of the main challenges was just the sheer amount of steps that it took to get students to upload these to their ePortfolio. So you can see our workflow document there. They had to access My Path, they had to download the Word document, fill it out with their peer leader, upload it back to Learn, put it in their ePortfolio, share it with the sharing group. There were a lot of steps. And so not only was it difficult for us to train our peer leaders on this process, because it was a little bit confusing for us, but it was also really difficult for the peer leaders and for the students to actually remember all these steps and complete this process. So sometimes what we saw is it just didn't work properly because the students weren't following the steps like they should have. So for a solution, what we tried with the School of Accounting and Finance peer leaders this year, with the help of Catherine, was actually creating a form, which is a specific function in Learn, with all of the SSP questions on it. So we'll take you through the process really soon. I'll show you actually how it works on Learn, but this process is much more user-friendly. You basically have the student access this form, fill it out with their peer leader. It automatically saves right to their ePortfolio, so they don't have to do anything, and then they just share it. So like I said, I'll go through it really quickly with you right now so you can actually see what happens. Could you hold this for me, Sam?
Mm-hmm.
So we have all of our SSPs in my staff community, which is School of Accounting and Finance. That's how it works for our group. So this is just where we access those documents. So you can see along the left-hand side here, there's lots of different sections. We'll go right to the Living Learning section, which is already open for us. And we'll access, let's say, the fall student success plan. So this would be the first plan that they do with their peer leaders when they come in for the fall term. So just 1 minute there. So here's the form, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to fill this out really quickly. It's not going to be super thorough. We hope that students do a bit of a better job. Theoretically they will, because they see the value of it. Come on. Okay. So then you just scroll down, you add a description, and you can also add tags, so it's easy to find later, which is really helpful. So I'll just add SSP tag. You can add reflection or whatever that looks like for the student, and just click save. Will it work today? That's the question. Okay, so created successfully. So then all the student has to do is go into their ePortfolio. This is a quicker process, I promise you. And here we are right here. So here's my success plan that I just completed right in my ePortfolio. To share it, all they would have to do is click on this little link here and press share. We have sharing groups set up that they use for each residence community has multiple floors, and each floor has its own sharing group. All they have to do is find that, and then they'll share it with that sharing group. So that's how that works there. So like I said, a lot easier, a lot more user-friendly, and 3 steps rather than 17. Much more helpful for students, that's for sure. Thank you, Sam.
Welcome.
So not only did this make our life much easier, but it also really helps support us in the goals of SSPs and kind of what we were looking for to achieve with SSPs. So number 1, feedback from peer leaders was captured very easily. So we talked a lot about feedback today and how that provides value to students, and it gives them kind of a reason to look back and to actually see this task as worthy of them doing if somebody else is going to be looking at it. So typically peer leaders would give feedback verbally to students if we were using a paper process. ePortfolios actually captures this electronically, like you saw before, so all they have to do is press comment, write in their little comment saying your goals are very realistic, you're on the right path, maybe you should think about using these resources, etc., and that students can access that whenever they're looking for support. Also, on that note, give students a reason to revisit ePortfolios as well, like we talked about before. They actually see this as being a worthy thing to be doing, because not only are they doing it in courses, but now they're doing it outside of the classroom as well, so there are multiple access points for them. And because of the form that we actually made for this particular task, students can fill this out before they even come to campus. So we saw in the winter term, multiple students actually filled it out before the winter term even started. So that made the meeting with their peer leader a lot more smooth, and they had much more time to ask those personal questions and get that personal support rather than just going through this document and filling out the SSP. Also, students who aren't in the LLCs or in the living learning communities can access these forms as well, so it's a tool for everybody to use if they're interested. So finally, it holds students and peer leaders more accountable to actually complete this task. As Sam was saying before, this is really, for us, a great first meeting point and that ice-breaking for the peer leader and the student in that relationship, that mentorship relationship. So if students know that their peer leaders are providing feedback and somebody's actually looking at these, they're more likely to give full, honest, complete answers. And if peer leaders know that we're able to monitor this process, they're more likely to actually go through it and do it properly. So that's really worked out well for us, and it's kind of helped us keep on top of what's happening in that process. So this is just an example of the feedback. So I know the presentation before us, you kind of saw this, but this is what it would look like on my page. So like Sam said, I can see all the SSPs that students have done on my particular page because I'm part of the sharing groups, and I can see the feedback that peer leaders have given to their students as well.
Okay, so what does this mean about academics? How do we integrate? So we've talked a little bit about the sharing groups that these allow Jessi, myself, the peer leader, and the student to see this information. Those are the only people that are seeing these personal documents because sometimes it is very sensitive grades and stuff that are being shared. So the way that we integrate is Jessi and I actually receive a summary from each of these peer leaders after these forms are all completed. We then summarize those trends and send them off to the faculty. So this is triggered in times when I've gone to the faculty and said, I'm finding a lot of students are struggling in this specific course. How can we support them more? And they love to hear those things. They love to hear about where students are struggling and then being able to pinpoint and help to support them a little bit more. So it's really great for us to really be able to see that information. We're able to see those challenges and successes of the students because we're able to go in and do that. The numbers overall there on the board, almost every one of my communities for the first 2 rounds of student success plans, 100% of the students in our living learnings went in and did this half-an-hour goal setting meeting with their peer leaders, which is really, really great. We see it drop down a little bit in the winter term, but it's still around 90% of people who are completing this and going in and using this tool. As well as, like Jessi said, it makes our peer leaders a little bit more accountable. They know that we can see it. I really don't actually go in and read 200 student success plans, but if I want to, I can. And our peer leaders know now that I can, whereas before on paper, I don't know how accountable they were. They were telling me they were doing them, but we really physically couldn't go through and ask for 200 sheets of paper to come back to us. It just wasn't realistic for us. As well as term transition. As you know, we're a co-op school. Most of about 75% of the students coming into the peer leader role are in co-op. So whereas our students are going to be here in the fall term, our leaders, most of them are going on co-op in the winter term, which means they're going to have the 8-month first year students are going to have a new peer leader transition in. What's really nice about this is I then go into my sharing group, take the original peer leader out, so all of that information that was there disappears because they don't need that in the future. I add the new peer leader in, and they're able to see the first 2 student success plans that they did with the students and carry those conversations on, so they're not starting from scratch in the winter. They really have a basis to go from. Anything else to add?
No, that's all. One of the last thing I want to add is that we didn't do this without help. Catherine was a great help to us, and I know there are liaisons in each faculty to support you in creating these ePortfolios and these forms and all these wonderful things. So that's been really great to access. They made it very easy and very enjoyable for us to do this process.
Another important part about how we've come into this process too is we didn't start with everybody. Jessi's been doing this for 2 years now. We've piloted her group and they started off, and then we brought my group in this fall, and she just transitioned to forms this winter term, and Catherine will be helping my groups transition that way too. So we're not doing everything all at once. We're kind of piloting certain areas, seeing what's going well, seeing where the successes are, where we're challenged, and then we're moving forward with the other areas. What questions do you guys have for us?
What other living learning groups, you haven't rolled it out to all of them yet, have you? Or are you planning to?
So we use ePortfolios for student success plans for all of our groups. We don't use forms for all of our groups. So the plan is for the summertime for Sam to start rolling the forms out to all of her groups, because at this point she's still using that long workflow for her student staff.
How many students are going to be involved in this? What's your
So right now, for my group, I have about 205 accounting and finance students, and then 12 peer leaders that manage those students. Sam, what would your...
And I would have approximately 250 students living in Ronite Village, 17 student leaders who come in and do these one-on-one meetings with them, and it's across 5 different programs that I supervise.
What are the programs?
The programs are arts and business, recreation and leisure, health studies, physical sciences, and biology.
And then we also have a second year accounting and finance living learning community as well that we do in the fall and the spring. So we would do student success plans with them as well.
Sorry, what tools are you using to judge the success of this in the second, third, or fourth years?
That's a good question. I think at this point it's all very much qualitative data. So we're looking at the completion rate for student success plans. Like Sam said, almost 100% of all of her communities have completed that. We're looking at the feedback and kind of how that's affected the completion rate as well. But that's all qualitative as well. We're not necessarily going in and doing that quantitative research yet. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.